Hello, everyone. My name is Gregory, and this is The View from Out Here. Today, I want to talk about the power of illusion. Now, I went back and forth with myself about this for over a week, trying to decide whether I was going to say this or not, because actually I'm a little afraid that many of you are going to think that I've gone nuts or have been sucked down into the rabbit hole of some conspiracy theory or something. And maybe that's true, who knows? But I think it's important to say this right now, so I'm just going to put it out there and let the chips fall where they may. I'm going to tell you a story that most of you are familiar with. It's from the Bible, and I think it's among the most important stories in the whole book. I'm going to put it in a context that you probably haven't thought about before. A little backstory is in order to set up my context. Now, just before the Adam and Eve story began, legend has it that God was in his heaven with his archangels and everything was sweetness and light. One of those archangels was named Gabriel, who you'll remember was the angel that appeared to Mary, the mother of Jesus, to see if she was okay with being the mother of God on earth. She says, "Sure, I'd be honored." So Gabriel impregnates her with Jesus. Now, another of the archangels in heaven was named Lucifer. Now, Lucifer was kind of cocky and thought of himself as being just like God, just as powerful and all that. And God was a little miffed at Lucifer's arrogance and cast him out of heaven. He said, "There's only one God, and it's me, so you're going to have to go." So God sets Lucifer up on this beautiful planet of his own where he can be God and be in charge of whatever he wants. The planet that God chose for Lucifer turns out to be Earth, this one. Okay, a bunch of stuff happens, and we fast forward to Mary and her husband Joseph having to register for taxes or the census or something, and they go to Bethlehem because that's where Joseph was born. On the way, Mary gives birth to Jesus in a manger, and there were three wise men, big star in the sky, some sheep, little drummer boy, blah, blah, blah. Jesus is born, and he grows to be fascinated with Judaism and ends up going to the temple a lot and discussing philosophy with the rabbis and the scholars. He's a pretty smart kid, and he impresses the rabbis and scholars with his understanding of things. So then there's this big exodus, and Mary and Joseph have to leave their home, and we lose track of Jesus for about 15 years. Some pretty important stuff happens with Jesus, but the Bible doesn't tell us what that is. You have to look elsewhere for information on that. Now we fast forward to Jesus appears again, and he's 30 years old, and his ministry is just about to get started. He goes up to a high place and fasts for 40 days and 40 nights. I'm not sure the significance of the 40 days, but you'll remember that the flood that destroyed the earth came from a big rainstorm a long time ago that lasted for 40 days and 40 nights. A little further on, the number 40 comes in again when the Jews were wandering around in the desert for 40 years. What is it about the number 40 in the Bible? I wonder if there's some connection. But I'm already getting off course. But back to the story. What Jesus was doing for those 40 days and 40 nights, Native Americans call a vision quest. Every Native male is expected to do a vision quest. It's part of their cultural upbringing. Jesus was meditating and fasting and praying for direction about how he was going to proceed with his life. He was burying roots into his self that would later become the armor for what was to come, that being his ministry. What was it going to be? I've done a vision quest myself and came out of it being settled with the fact that I'm gay, and that's okay whether the world agrees with me or not. I accept the gift that I am. Every out and proud gay person that you know has done their own their own version of a vision quest. And it looks a little different for each of us, but it's the same basic idea. So Jesus comes out of his vision quest and he immediately is confronted by Satan, the devil, Lucifer, or whatever you want to call him. Now I have to veer off the story again for a second to talk about the devil. I don't believe that there is a red man all buffed up with horns coming out of his head and a tail and a pitchfork. That's ridiculous. I think what those words and images refers to is an energy, and I'm calling that energy the power of illusion. An illusion is something that appears to be one thing, but is actually in truth something else entirely. I lived in Arizona for many years, and I can testify that a mirage is an actual thing. I've seen many of them. They are illusions of something that you can clearly see with your eyes that doesn't really exist. Now, I love being entertained by a good magician. They play with our perceptions of reality. I even know how some of these illusions are performed. But there's nothing unnatural about what they're doing. They are just directing our attention while they manipulate things to show us something that we know is impossible. I enjoy having my mind played with by a good magician that knows what he's doing. Okay, now we can get back to the story. Jesus comes out of his vision quest, and the power of illusion offers him the entire planet, lock, stock, and barrel. And all he has to do is bow down and worship the power of illusion. To accept an illusion as truth, to accept the illusion as his reality. And Jesus thinks about it for about a half a second and says, nah, don't get me wrong, it's a very nice planet you have here, but I'm good. I have other stuff that I need to do. Jesus turns the offer down. So that leaves us with this question. Whose planet is this? Who does it belong to? Remember, Jesus turned it down. It's not his. I hope you're a jump ahead of me at this point, and you can see where I'm going with this. This planet is still owned by the power of illusion. The illusion that Jesus turned down still owns the place. As a seeker of truth or reality, I'm living in somebody else's house, and I'm only here at the mercy of the owner. This is not my home. That's where the saying, I'm in the world but not of it, comes from. Who do we all know that is literally drowning in illusion? A guy to whom appearances are everything. The guy who won't release his tax returns because they will reveal the illusion that he's wealthy. The guy who won't release the results of his physical exams because it will reveal the illusion that he's healthy. The guy who won't release the results of his cognitive testing because it will reveal the illusion that he is mentally sound. The guy who produced a reality show that was carefully manufactured to create the illusion of reality. Yep, Donald J. Trump, the convicted felon who presents himself to a whole branch of Christianity as the chosen one, who was supposedly sent here by God in this time and place to make America great again. And those Christians are lapping it up with a biscuit. Now, right here, I need to introduce a new element to the story. We live in a duality, and in a duality, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And those actions and reactions move in cycles. When one energy begins to rise, another opposing energy rises to meet it. Whichever of the two energies is the most powerful is the one that prevails until the next surge begins to form that will eventually rise to replace that one. We've been through these surges before. One that comes to mind is the surge that led to the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition in Europe. Another is the energy surge that Hitler rode to power. It even happened here in this country with the Salem witch hunts. What's happening right now is very similar. The energy of fear and anger has everyone afraid that something is being taken away from them, and they feel a compelling need to get whatever it is back. They're right, too. All of us are having things taken away from us. Both sides. One side has been led to believe that democracy is the problem. Democracy is robbing them of their freedom. The other side is facing the probability of an authoritarian takeover by a criminal organization that wants to put them in jail or worse. While we're fighting against one another, there's another illusion at work. That illusion is power, in this case, we're talking about money, which isn't getting a lot of scrutiny while our attention is focused on fighting one another. That illusion is quietly working in the background, scooping up obscene amounts of money that is being generated by our fighting. Many people are looking for a strong figure that will save them from the civic confusion and uncertainty that we're all facing right now. What would be funny under other circumstances is that almost 40% of the country is looking to the very guy who is a big part of creating the confusion and uncertainty to save them from it. The other side is worried because their guy doesn't project much of an image of strength. They are both showing signs of the kind of decline that often accompanies their age. There is also the reasonable possibility that either of them could die in office, throwing the entire country into even further confusion and anxiety. While all of this is happening here in the West, in the rest of the world, we have Xi Jinping, Kim Jong un, Ayatollah Khomeini, Vladimir Putin, all of them authoritarian dictators, are forming an alliance against democracy, and that means most of Europe and the Western Hemisphere. Donald Trump and the Republican Party are already in the process of destroying democracy and the institutions that hold it together. They clearly want to join this alliance. The big illusion that all of these authoritarian rulers rely on is fear, which is what explains how Donald Trump keeps getting his Congress people back in line after they go public with statements against him, like they did with the January 6th insurgency. Right after that, they were just bad-mouthing him. They're all back in line now, though, because Donald Trump did a skillful Jedi mind trick on them. He instilled in the fear in them. I'm reminded of what President Roosevelt said in 1933. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. That quote is taken from his first inaugural address, and there's a lot more inspiring things in that speech. I read it while I was working on this piece. You'll find a link to it in the description below, and I highly recommend that you have a look at it if you feel a need to be inspired. My point in all of this is that the power of illusion, the owner of this planet, is rising right now. And this time, it's global, and it's based on the biggest illusion of them all. That illusion is that we are separate from one another. That's the illusion that Jesus said no to. That is the biggest illusion of them all. I want to thank you for hanging with me so far. And if you find anything of value here, please take a moment to like and subscribe. And don't forget about my memoir, Searching for Saint Germain. I'm sure you'll find it a good read. So far, everyone who has read it says so. You'll find links to it in the description below as well. Meanwhile, my name is Gregory, and this has been The View from Out Here. Much love.
Summer. Kind of. Well, it's almost summer.